Well, welcome everybody. How you doing this afternoon? Everybody still awake after such a big lunch, right? I want to share with you, I came to my first conference about 5 years ago, and one of the most profound presentations was the experiencer board. So when I saw them planning the conference for Texas, I said, hey, we need to reserve some of that experiencer panel for people from Texas. Now, we got one stand-in today, but she's got an amazing story. I'm not going to take a bunch of your time because it's their stories that I hope will have a profound effect on you also. I'm just going to go first names. I've got Sharon on my left, Ellen, and Rudy. And from this point forward, they get to speak.
I'm an adopted sister of Texas, originally the worst kind of Yankee you can get. Someone guessed that was Wisconsin. It's not. It's New York City. I was born this way, as far as I can tell. My first memory, one of my earliest childhood memories, is sitting on the radiator like this, having the sun come in, rising out of my body, and holding hands with the angels in the sky. I was a closeted psychic. I had visions, I had premonitions, and I knew that people thought I was crazy. I started reading Edgar Cayce when I was 11. In 1977, I had a profound near-death experience. It was probably not my first one, but I don't know for sure. I was 27 years old at the time, and that was 38 years ago. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's hard to be a 38-year-old in a 65-year-old body. I think I'd rather be a 65-year-old in a 38-year-old body. And when I look in the mirror, I see gray hair, and I see wrinkles, and I see, according to American standards, that I have a few too many pounds. And I'm probably a very small percentage of the population that knows what gefilte fish is and can actually eat it. However, that is not who I am. And I wanted to ask the psychiatrist a question yesterday because I live what is essentially a split reality, and I'm not a split personality. Sharon is not who I am. Sharon is who I wear. She is a beloved creation of that which I truly am. And so I live this dual existence, and I made up my mind about 15 years ago that Sharon, my creation, needed to be the perfect vehicle, the perfect instrument for who I really am. And I have the understanding through many spiritual experiences that can only be expressed like Anita did in metaphors. And I understand that love is like music, that at our foundation, every single one of us is pure love, and that that love comes through us as if we are instruments. And our instruments through life, through our training, either get dented or dinged or bent or torn, or sometimes just shortened so that what might be a full keyboard is just a small keyboard. And I said to this creation of mine, Sharon, I would like you to heal your instrument. I would like your instrument to be as good as possible to allow the music to be as beautiful as it could possibly be. And that was a commitment that I made to myself 15 years ago. And it hasn't been an easy journey. It's actually been a painful one. I spent 6 hours a day for 4 months at one time when I was unemployed. And that unemployment check gave me the opportunity to do that. And I just sat, not meditating, not doing anything, with no intention except to just be. And as the energy came into me, as the love, as the power came into me, it hit every pattern, every block, every iota of training that I had that was not part of love and light. And all I could do was breathe. I had been a midwife in the 70s, and I knew that breathing was the way you gave birth to something. And I just breathed and breathed and breathed. And I'd go into the pain instead of trying to avoid it. And as I breathed through it, something would release and some pattern would go. And that is what I believe is for all of us, is to just breathe. PMH had us do that one night. Breathe and let the light in. There is no other side. We don't need to talk about when we were there. We're here. It's now. It's here. It's all one. And that's really all I have to say. I can pass my time on to someone else. Linda just asked me to tell a little bit more about my NDE. I was alone in my home. It was 1977. I do not know what month it was. As a result of my NDE, I came back with a pretty fair share of amnesia, not complete. I came back with a pretty fair share of aphasia, not complete. And I became left-handed and left-eyed instead of right-handed and right-eyed, and I was completely dyslexic. I mean, letters not only reversed, they actually lifted off the page in little atoms and did Spanish dance competitions. All I know is I woke up on the floor of my house, and I was in a fetal position. And my mantra at the time, because I was always spiritual, was thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. So I'm rocking on the floor in a fetal position saying thank you, God. And I passed out again, and I woke up again. And I passed out again, and I woke up again. And the last time I woke up, I knew I was going to die. And it was wonderful. And I was okay with that. And the next thing, at the end of my experience, which was quite profound, and I called God a tractor beam, like from Star Trek, because there are no words to describe the experience, and I won't go into the depth of the experience. I came back not because the 30-foot being of light, who was the representative of God, said go back, because two of my friends that died when I was a teenager, who were beautiful opal circles of light, their essence didn't telepath but empathed to me. It's okay, Sha. You need to go back. And Sha was my nickname. And so I knew I had to go back, and I slammed into my body. It was extremely painful. It was like forcing all of me into a salt shaker. Afterwards, I gained 75 pounds because there wasn't enough room. And after I came back, I'm lying there and just blitzed. Whoa. And I heard glass breaking, and I looked over, and there was a hand reaching through the broken glass to open my door. And a coworker came in and said that they'd been trying to contact me from work for 3 days, and I hadn't answered my phone, and so they came looking for me. And I believe that the spirit world didn't let them come until I was back.
Thank you. Ella?
Hi, my name is Ellen Dye. A little closer? Okay. And I was one of the lucky people who had an interest in, and I was a seeker my whole life. And so during the 70s and 80s, I did a lot of reading, and all of the metaphysical books that I could get my hands on. That started, I would say, when I was 12, when my mother died in the hospital. But she actually showed up in my bedroom the night she died. And I walked out into the living room and told my grandmother that my mother had died, and she said, "Oh no, honey, you know, she's very sick, but she's still here." And just about that time, my father called to inform us that she had passed. And at that moment, it was like, there's a lot more going on than they're teaching me in Sunday school. And I'm going to find out what it is. and I that put my feet firmly on the path of the seeker, and I have never looked back. When other girls were sneaking out of the house in high school to go on dates, I was sneaking out of the house to go to seances. And actually, I would have gotten in more trouble if my father had known that that's what I was doing. But so fast forward to 1985, I was 35 years old. And at this point, I've read all the books, I have all the knowledge, I consider myself very wise, I understand these things, and I am enlightened. Well, my higher self, or God, the universe, and all that is, decided that actually, no, I was kind of a slow learner, and I had to be hit in the head with a car and have a timeout and go to the principal's office. So I was in a head-on collision in a car. We were both going through on a straight road through an intersection with a traffic light. And at the very last minute, the other guy decided to turn left right in front of me. And I had no time to even process the thought that he was turning. And the next thing I knew, I was looking down at the top of my car from about 20 feet up. And fortunately, I had heard about out-of-body experiences, but I'd never had one. And I was sort of like, woohoo, I did it. You know, I'm out of my body. And I thought there should be like a light around here somewhere. There should be a tunnel of light. And as soon as I thought that, it was like, whoosh. I could hear it, I could feel it, and it was kind of over here. And I turned somehow. At this point, I feel like I'm still in my body, but I know my body is in the car. It's like, and it gave me a moment of, you know, who is the I that's thinking I'm out of my body and I'm looking at the top of my car? But that passed as I felt the light, and it pulsed, and it was alive, and it was the most delicious feeling of love I've ever experienced. And it had such an attraction that it just pulled me through, and I went through this tunnel. And it got stronger, and this feeling of being enveloped in this love got stronger and stronger every second. Now, there's no time, of course, but it felt like this. It took me days to get through the tunnel. This whole experience felt like it lasted for centuries, and simultaneous at the same time. And as I got through the tunnel, there were all of my relatives, including my mother, and she looked like she was about 35. They all looked healthy and happy and vibrant, and they were so glad to see me, and I was so glad to see them. You know, grandparents, aunts and uncles. The really fascinating part for me was a biological family. I was adopted as an infant. I had no idea who my biological family was. I found them later, and in the pictures they looked just like the folks I saw at the end of the tunnel. And there was my biological father saying, "I'm so sorry, but I've been with you, even though I couldn't be with you in person. I've been with you the whole time." And that was it. I mean, it was just amazing to have that experience. But at the same time, I thought, you know, this is really nice to see these people again, and they look wonderful. but I don't think I'm here to see them. And I felt myself moving down this path. And at about that time, I thought, you know, all this light is disconcerting, and I need it to kind of look like 3 dimensions, even though it's not. It has to look like a place, or I'm going to feel really weird. And it was as if somebody took this big brush and just went like this across a canvas. And suddenly I was looking at a park-like setting. And there was grass and trees and flowers, and they all were, the colors were things that we never see here. I mean, what we see here is like looking through a sheer curtain. It's almost gray compared to what's there. And everything was alive and sentient, and there were, you know, trees and birds and animals, and suddenly I saw all, you know, the cats and dogs. Every cat and dog I ever knew in my life who had passed was there, and they were just running around having a great time. And I found myself walking down this pathway, and I walked for a while, and I came to this, it seemed like a very big gazebo, and there were these beings inside, very tall, about 12 to 15 feet tall, beings of light, and about 13 of them, and I stood in the middle and we talked, and they reminded me of everything that I really already knew, that we all know about life, the universe, and everything, about the humanity and where we're going. They showed me the golden age of humanity, and we're just on the brink of it. We're almost there. And at the end, I said, well, I'm not going back there, and you can't make me. And they said, it's all right, dear. You can do whatever you want. You're a divine, sovereign being. But let us first remind you why you planned this lifetime and what you wanted to accomplish. And I'm like, doesn't matter, I'm not going, it's nasty there. The next thing, I woke up in the emergency room, and I got handed a ticket because the guy who hit me said that I didn't have my lights on and was trying to blame me for the accident. And I said, what happened? The nurse said, you were in a car accident, dear. You're in the emergency room. I said, that's not what I mean. Why am I here? And I mean, it's taken me 30 years to figure out why I made the decision to come back. I was one of those people who was severely depressed for a long time, and pretty much prayed to die every night, and was disappointed when I woke up every morning. And then finally I snapped out of it because it wasn't working. But, so now I know that part of my mission, I don't think we come back for just one thing, except to be here and play our note in this magnificent divine symphony, that part of my mission is to share with people that we are so loved. That's all there is. We are so loved. The judgment and punishment are things that humans do. We judge ourselves, we judge each other, we punish ourselves, we punish each other. God doesn't do that. God just loves us, no matter what we do. God knows how hard it is here. God admires us for being willing to come here and give it a go. We have so much tremendous support, we just can't see it. But if you tune in, you can feel all the love around you all the time. Remember to ask for help, because it is always there. It is always there. But you have to ask, because they're not going to interfere with us, because we have free will. So it's all about love. And sometimes it's really hard to be loving in the world that we've created. But every little bit that we can try to do, every little bit of trying to create heaven on earth is so important and has such a ripple effect. We are all magnificent, divine, powerful creators, and we need to step into that and recognize it and be love. Thank you.
Yeah. Ellen, you're not quite off the hook.
Oh.
Those spiritual beings, can you tell us a little bit more about them, please?
That was the question you had to ask, huh? Okay. I don't actually share this with everyone, so don't tell anybody, all right? When I first started having my NDE, and I would talk about my NDE, in '85 there was not a lot of literature out there. It's not like today. I mean, I would watch people's eyes roll back into their heads. So the part I really wouldn't tell, and I'm still very careful because an NDE is outside of the envelope for a lot of people. But what I'm about to tell you is farther out. The beings of light that I met with were a highly, highly, highly evolved race of beings who have existed for eons, who helped create our world, who helped create humans, and who love us so much. They're so loving. They see every aspect of who we are and love everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That was the most incredible experience, to be seen in that way by these beings and to just be embraced. And it was like, it's okay, dear, you're fine. And they take an active role in helping humanity and loving humanity, and they are there for any of us to call on. Okay, are you ready? They were lion beings. When you look around, I found out that in ancient times, the path to enlightenment was the way of the lion. It got shortened to the way. When you look in, ancient sculpture, the Sphinx, who do you have guarding the sides, the doors of a museum? Lions. The lions have been instrumental in helping humans evolve, as long as we've existed. And all I can say is they are so loving. They're so beautiful. When I saw that show in probably the 70s, Beauty and the Beast, I really lusted after that guy who played the lion, because that's what people are supposed to look like. But they love all of us, and they have an incredible sense of humor, and they always remind me, remember to laugh, because being a spirit, trying to be a human, is probably one of the funniest things in the universe.
Now we're going to go to Rudy, and Rudy, I'm just going to remind you, we want to know what you were before versus today.
Well, I'll start by saying I'm a product recall. Okay, so can we at least start there? And I've asked this before, but I want y'all to give me permission to be vulnerable. Is that okay? Anybody not allowing me to, I'll just quit talking. Okay. I would call who I was a Christian jihadist. Does that sound strong? Is that strong language? That's pretty strong language. My fantasy at 14 years old was to fly a glider into the Kremlin with a nuclear bomb attached for God to destroy communism. Now, do any of you believe in manifestation? Okay, I started manifesting that. And you may say, well, you're crazy. But I was a pilot at 14 years old. I flew 3 paper routes every day and paid for my own pilot's lessons, my flying lessons. And I would study the militaries of every country on earth, and I simulated battles. every day. That was my every waking thought. At 18, I just couldn't wait to go through college to become a pilot. I joined the military, Army, so that I could become a warrant officer. And it's a way to fly in the Army without a degree. And I did. I joined the military. I was in the military, and there was a time when we were about to go to war with Iran. Now, Iran, at the time, we didn't really know much about Iran as we do today. But we were about to go to war with Iran, and I was going to training to where we were planning to go to war with Iran. But prior to this training, there had been a conversation in the military about how we needed a new enemy because, well, we were going around picking up cigarette butts. The Cold War was over. We needed something else to do. And so we picked on the Muslim nations. They were the new enemies. We planned 300 years of war against the Muslim nations. Now, they said something in that meeting that was really important. They said, we're going to do a lesser evil to prevent a greater evil. And I had cognitive dissonance. That doesn't mean I didn't agree with him, but I said something like this in my head: that makes us evil. And I went right on planning and helping the planning of these wars. And this, in particular one, we were going to war with Iran. And saner minds prevailed. Fortunately, World War III didn't start that during that time. But on my way to this training where we were going to begin the planning, I was driving down a road and I was going to visit a gal because she said she would give me a kiss if I would drop by. And so I went 300 miles out of my way. Okay. But I was going down the road, and this is right out of Stephen King or something. The sign started flapping on the road. The rain was pouring down. It was windy, 40 miles per hour, blowing around my little bitty car. And so I picked a road. It was a Y, and I went off to the right, the far right. And I went down a road called Double S Road, and I was washed off the road. I had a life review, very traditional life review. No, it was different in that I was shown not those times when I was planning and plotting and scheming to kill and murder, not my hatred of everyone who wasn't just like me. I was shown what matters, our treasures. Our treasures are those moments when we were gentle, kind, loving, compassionate, merciful, and joyful. Our joys and compassions and kindnesses and mercies are the times when we get these gems. They're our gems. They're who we are, and you get to keep them. But I didn't have very many. I was 20, 21 years old, and I only had about 10 minutes of those gems in my life review of 20, 21 years. So I wasn't very a nice guy, even though I'd considered myself to be good in my own heart. And I believe God hated everyone that I hated, or I didn't really hate them. I didn't know a gay person. I didn't know a communist. I didn't know a Catholic. I'm going down the list. It gets longer and longer and longer of people that I thought God hated. And I was drawn into the light. I looked up, and there it was. And I didn't know where I was here, and it was very, very dark. But there, I knew I'm going there. And so, like Superman, I put my arms out, I go up into the light. And as I'm going up, the darkness that's attached to me starts falling off of me like a washing machine. And the further and further I went up, I finally arrive in heaven. And I want to tell you, it's awesome. I I walked through this door, and I say walk, but I was an orb of light. And I walked through this door, and it's just beaming love. It's just blasting through you. It's amazing. You cannot, there's no darkness left in you. It's gone. There's no hatred, no unlove, no cruelty. Nothing inside of me is left but my little 10 minutes of fame of loving kindness, gentleness. It wasn't big, my mighty, wanting to conquer the communist for Jesus. It was when you ask somebody in a gentle way if they want help. Or in my case, I saw my flying dreams. I was a pilot. I saw myself flying over rivers. I saw the times when my grandfather was fishing with me, my mother's kindness, my best friend, and I. And I saw what mattered in a book, because I went to my book. It's like a big cloudy room, and I saw that, and this light being is right beside me and goes with me. He says, take this with you, and not like I'm talking to you, but from here to there. And we go to a big, huge room where I met God. And you think that I'm not afraid. I am not afraid, but this being says, don't look up or you will die. And so I crawled forward. I'll tell you, it's amazing, the love. And it's not some kind of like make-believe love. It's like joyful laughter, kind, loving, just like I'm crazy in love with you, like a grandmother loves her grandchild. Not like I want you to come up here and tell me how much you love me. No, I'm so proud of you because you learned this little bitty tiny little thing about love. I'm so happy for you, like a baby taking their first step. My child took their first step this day, and it was awesome. And I get before the light. It's like a Supreme Court bench, and I'm keeping my head down, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of beings all around me, and they're all cheering. What are they cheering? I have just this little bitty time. They're cheering for me. They're every single person you'll ever interact with, ever, in a loving way, in a kind way, in a gentle way. They were all there in your whole life. They're all there. There's no such thing as time. They're there waiting for, not just me, but you, everyone. And God, the light. God said to me, did you learn enough about love? Not really a question, is it? Right? I said, well, I've never been married and never had children. And so I thought, well, you get all the answers, right? No, I didn't have the answers. As soon as I said that, I was kicked out of heaven. Boom! And I'm on this golden road. Not gold, but just translucent, transparent, what's translucent gold road, very wide. And I get in this line of all these orbs of light, and they're all so very different that the difference between Muslim and Christian and a grasshopper, those things are not even that significant. What I thought God hated, God loved not just Muslims and Christians and grasshoppers, but everything ever. And so I got in this line, and I said, I've done this many times before. I had that thought. And I fell back off the edge of earth, of heaven, and I came back to my body. Don't have enough time to talk about it. But what I will say is this, that I wasn't a narcissistic, homophobic, xenophobic, sexist anymore. I changed, but it wasn't something I did overnight. I'm still a work in progress. I still got stuff to work on because I'm here. but I don't want to get back in that line and have to do this again. All right.
Rudy, as you mentioned that you were told, do not look up. As you came back, you came to realize why they told you do not look up. There would have been a consequence if you looked up. Can you remind us what that was?
I was in bad shape down there. I had a broken neck, and a lady came out there to save me. There was a volunteer emergency service there within minutes, out in the middle of nowhere. It was divine intervention. But I was bleeding to death with a broken neck. And if I would have looked up, there's no going back. I was that close. We've had a lot of nurses here, and I don't know if there are any in the room. But I want to tell you, the nurses that smiled towards me, they said nice things to me. If it wasn't for them, I would have gone. I was in so much pain.
I was going to give the crowd a chance, if you've got an individual question for somebody on the panel, if you want to come up to the mic and address it to an individual or to the panel as a whole, just for all of you, address it in that way. And we've got somebody with a question.
Okay. The question was he wanted to hear a little more about the golden age that I saw was shown during my near-death experience. And I've done a lot of studies since then about the great shift that we're going through, the shift of the ages. So we all heard about going from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age, and this is a huge thing. The golden age, though, is a time when humans step into their fullness. In my perception, the second coming is when humans step into the Christ consciousness and start acting Christ-like toward each other. And I saw that there is coming a time, and it's not that far away, when we will do that. And it will happen one heart and one soul at a time as each person returns to love. And it seems like if you look at nature, you get an idea of how fast things occur, which it's not going to be simultaneous for everyone. It's not going to be an overnight sudden change. But we're moving in that direction. And to me, the more we focus on the positive things that are happening in the world rather than focusing on the negative, we help to bring in more of the positive. The negative things that are going on, I mean, it looks like hell, we're going to hell in a handcart, it's kind of like the last gasp of the old ways. We're shifting and changing. A lot of people have had, very disruptive changes, but in retrospect, you will see that those changes were pushing you toward the love. And that's where we're going. It's not going to take that long. The planets are all helping us right now. This is a magic time.
My name's Richard, and I want to thank you all for your presentation. My interest right now is kind of narrowed. It's I'd like to know from each of you what your religious background was before your experience, and then what has changed about that. I suspect I'll hear that it's a lot changed, very very different than you used to believe, and what impact that has had in your life from the point of your experience.
my genetically inherited body is Jewish. And so the cells have Jewish tendencies, and I was raised in a Reformed Jewish household, but my grandparents were Orthodox Jewish. And because of my spiritual inclinations, I liked the first rabbi. I told my mother when I was 8 that he was very wise, but when I was 9, we got a new rabbi, and I said, he's an idiot, I don't want to listen to him anymore. And when I was between the age of 13 and 16, I lost my 3 closest friends, each to horrible illness. My best friend died of lymphatic cancer, and I watched her day by day, and on the day she died, I raised my fist to God and I said, you're a bastard and I'll have nothing to do with you. And so I was an atheist for 7 years until I had a spiritually transforming experience when I was going through my divorce. And my grandmother, Robin, and Chris, my other friend who died when I was 16, he was 18, came to me, and there was a being there that identified itself as my guardian angel, and I had no concept of guardian angels. It's not a Jewish thing, and it certainly isn't an atheist thing. And so my spirituality has always been love, source, universal, and religions are kind of like if 4 people go up to the mountaintop and see something miraculous, one person is visual and describes it in a visual terms, and another person's auditory and describes it in auditory terms. Another person is kinesthetic and describes it in kinesthetic terms. They're all describing the same thing, and they all understand it's the same thing, and then their followers argue over who's right. So my religion, I don't call myself religious, I call myself spiritual.
I was raised in sort of 3 different Protestant theologies, I guess. We went to Sunday school at the Presbyterian church, and I went to a Lutheran elementary school, and we had chapel every Wednesday. And then when I was about 12, we became Methodists. And so I started to see that, when you have a bunch of different people who all say that they're right, and everybody else is wrong, and they're all saying that they're right, somebody's not right. So I think at an early age I realized that there were kind of some discrepancies going on. And I also realized when my mother died and I saw her in my room that there was a lot more out there than they were teaching us. One of my proudest moments was being expelled from Sunday school because much to my father's horror and mortification, because I would say things like, but I didn't understand why God wouldn't let a baby into heaven just because it wasn't baptized, or I didn't understand why God would punish somebody just because the missionary never got to their village and told them about Jesus. It's like, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I was never what one would call traditionally religious, and I think over time I have softened toward what I call organized religion and dogma, because now I truly understand every path leads to God. You might not be on the path I'm on. You may not have the belief system I have, but we're all searching for the same thing. And every single religion has truth in it and transcendence and love in it. And I think the golden rule idea is in all religions in some way. And I just wish people would focus a little more on that commonality than on some of the discrepancies. But to me, it's all love.
I won't tell you my religion that I was before, because it's not fair. Because everybody who came from my religion doesn't believe as I did. However, something that they did say in the church that I attended, that I was a member of, that I was baptized in, it was Vietnam War, and you have to go back and the preacher, pastor, whatever you want to call him, he says that it's the liberals' fault that we can't win the war in Vietnam. If we did as God asked us to do, we would do as God treated the enemies of God in the Old Testament. And what he said was that the way that Scripture read, and I'm not going to read it to you verbatim because I don't know it verbatim, is that we would kill every man, woman, child, kill their cattle, and bash their babies' brains against the rocks. Now, you may say that's not in there, but it's in there if you look. And I believed that God hated the enemies enough to bash babies' brains against the rocks. Oh, now, I would call myself a Christian light, okay? I did meet a Jesus in my NDE, a Jesus-like being. I did meet a being of light, very, very loving. And I do find that being in my religion. What I am now is a pacifist Christian. I don't believe in participating in militarism. Don't believe in killing. I believe that killing someone else is the same thing as chopping off, well, ripping my heart out. That's my religion.
Thank you. I'm watching the live streamers and just wanted to share a few comments. I wanted to thank this panel in particular for being normal, average human beings who had near-death experiences, and you in particular for sharing some of the struggles you faced afterwards, because they said it helps people integrate to know that it's all, it's not all wine and roses afterwards. And for you, Ellen, one lady in the chat quoted Revelation. She said, "Weep not, behold the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David." So they all loved the lions here. I believe many have had those experiences. And thank you so much, because I just want to say, God, 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 God. Thank you from God, 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 and God on the live stream. Bless you.
Okay, I just have a couple questions. Like, I did several years studying UFOs and aliens, and several years studying near-death experiences. And to me, there seems to be something common about that, like the light, and they always communicated without words. And I just wondered if there's any correlation. And then the other question is about killing bugs or using insecticides. And, I hate to kill bugs, but sometimes you just need to. The uglier they are, the more you want to kill them. But it seems to be that way. But I just wondered about the two things. It's awful to kill things, but yet sometimes we have to with bugs and stuff. And then about the beam of light and aliens communicating. They do the same thing. They communicate with their heart, and sometimes people feel like a beam of light when they go with them. Does anyone know anything about that or heard anything?
I'm going to give them a moment to think about it, but as a former rancher, I am going to speak up. I had to take a pest control handler's license so I could take care of my farmland. And a pest is a perfectly good creature from God in the wrong place. And sometimes we have to use man-made methods. That's how I accepted it. On the other issue, I'll let the other speak.
My friends and I started an organic fruit farm, one of the largest in America at the time, in 1975. You can get rid of your pests, but do it nicely.
I pray for them first.
I always tell them, bless you, as I kill them.
Well, first of all, Ellen's lions, I don't know what they are, but they certainly weren't human beings.
Well, yeah, so I believe in extraterrestrials because, I always thought it was kind of arrogant for us to think that we were the only ones in the universe. And I also thought, if we're the highest and best that God could produce, that is really sad when you look around this world. So, I mean, that's just my view. But so I believe that there are all kinds of different races and species out there. And perhaps, perhaps the insects that are on our planet and the animals that are on our planet are representative of carrying the energy of other extraterrestrial species. I have no idea. There's so many things that our 3D minds can't comprehend or don't know. It's like, at some point we may meet our brothers and sisters on spaceships. I think that would be really cool. I personally want to have a nice furry hug from a lion being. and I'd like to have it sooner rather than later, and I wish they would, beam down into my living room. But so I don't know. As far as insects and things, I understand. My understanding is that they really are, all of the animals here. They have souls. They have consciousness. They agreed to come and support the earth and to support humanity. And as Linda said, a pest is an insect in the wrong place. I tend to, if I see insects in my house, I give them a lecture and say, you can't be here, this is not your place. You need to go. You need to go now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to zap you. And sometimes I have to, and I apologize first.
Rudy, you got 1 minute.
Well, I saw them, okay? They were going off to different places. If I would have continued my NDE. When I was falling back to Earth, I saw different beings going off to different places. They weren't going to Earth with me, and they were so different, but they were made out of the same light. They had the same orbs of light. As far as insects go, it isn't just insects, it's plants are sentient as well. I saw a time in the future where we will not kill even a plant. And a time in the future, this golden age, where no plant will die because you'll eat the fruit, but not the tree. You will eat the root, but it will grow back. You will eat only what there is that will not kill the plant. And there will be like scientists that will make sure that the plants don't die. And the insects, I'm a work in progress.
Well, I want to thank the panel here. We do have a person who was born in Texas. That's Rudy. We have somebody who got here as fast as they could. And we got an honorary Texan here. And thank you for your time.